There's something hilarious about how hard people try to push this so-called rivalry. You've seen it. The headlines practically scream it. Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark, the future of the WNBA. Social media goes feral. ESPN drops flashy promos like it's the NBA Finals. And every time the Chicago Sky face the Indiana Fever, the buildup makes you think we're about to witness a war, a generational clash. Bird versus Magic. Prime Diana Taurasi versus Sue Bird. Except, once the game actually starts, that entire fantasy collapses in real time. Because this rivalry, it doesn't exist. Not in any meaningful competitive way. Not when one team keeps getting cooked like this. Let's look at the facts, not the hype. The Indiana Fever have faced the Chicago Sky 7 times in their most recent stretch. They've won 6 of those matchups, and these weren't buzzer-beater victories or grinded-out defensive classics. These were beatdowns, embarrassments. Games where you start looking around the court wondering if one team accidentally showed up to the wrong gym. This isn't a heated back and forth. It's a one-sided demolition that somehow keeps getting marketed like it's a championship preview. It's wild how people are still pretending this is balanced, that these games are about 2 stars who bring out the best in each other. Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese are both phenomenal in their own right, but let's be real. Indiana is building something with actual structure, talent, and depth. Meanwhile, Chicago is out here praying that viral moments and themed nights will distract from what's really going on. The Sky aren't keeping up, they're hanging on, and the numbers back it all up. This season alone, the Fever haven't just beaten the Sky, they've dismantled them. Game after game, Indiana doesn't just leave with a W, they leave a crater. We're talking blowouts by 15, 27, 35 points. Across just 3 games, the Fever outscored Chicago by 77 points total. Let that sink in. That's more than most teams score in an entire game, and it's the difference spread across just 3 meetings. That's not competitive. That's surgical. But here's the thing, the narrative persists. Why? Because the storylines are too juicy to let go. 2 women, 2 iconic college careers. One light-skinned sharpshooter from Iowa, the other a fierce vocal rebounding machine from LSU. Their paths collided in college, exploded into viral moments, and now every rematch gets painted as the next great chapter. And maybe, if you don't actually watch the games, you might believe it. Maybe if you just scroll TikTok or skim Twitter, you'll see the clips and think this is real competition. But if you actually watch, if you actually pay attention to the court, you'll see the truth. Angel Reese might sell jerseys, Caitlin Clark might sell out arenas, but the only team actually delivering when it matters is Indiana. The Fever aren't just winning, they're exposing the illusion. Every game is a reminder that hype is not the same as results. And every time Chicago steps on the court, the scoreboard tells the story the media refuses to write. And the latest chapter? Oh, it's the worst one yet. Because what happened on Barbie Night was straight up humiliating. And Caitlin Clark didn't even have to suit up to steal the whole show. You ever throw a party and then get kicked out of your own house? That's exactly what happened to the Chicago Sky on their biggest promotional night of the season, Barbie Night. The team went all in on the Angel Reese branding machine. Pink everywhere, a custom merch drop, themed social posts, United Center booked. A full-on spectacle built around one thing, Angel Reese's star power. And yet, the star herself wasn't even playing. Reese was ruled out due to injury, and with her absence, the whole event started to feel like a movie set with no lead actress. But hold up, it gets worse. Because across the court, the Indiana Fever were also missing their biggest name. No Caitlin Clark, no problem. And that's where this whole story turns from a marketing misfire into a complete public humiliation. Indiana didn't just show up shorthanded. They walked into Chicago's most hyped-up, heavily promoted home game and handed them a straight-up 93-78 smackdown. The Sky got cooked in their own arena, in front of their own fans, on the very night they were supposed to shine. It was so bad, fans literally renamed the event on social media. Barbie Night? Nah, people started calling it Fever Night. That's how disrespectful the beatdown was. Chicago built a pink castle and then handed Indiana the keys. Think about what that says. The Sky picked the United Center, not their usual arena, specifically for this matchup. That's how much faith they had in the storyline. They leaned into the Reese versus Clark rivalry. assuming that whether Caitlyn played or not, the energy would be electric. Instead, what they got was a 15-point L, a full house of disappointed fans, and a highlight reel starring the other team. A game that was supposed to elevate the Sky brand ended up turning into a fever showcase, without Clark even touching the court. And the disrespect didn't stop at the scoreboard. The visuals told the story loud and clear. Caitlin Clark, sitting in street clothes, was mobbed by hundreds of fans begging for autographs. Entire sections of the United Center were lined up just to get a glimpse of her, not the game. The Fever were up double digits, and still, the crowd's biggest cheers came when Clark waved, smiled, or signed a kid's jersey. That's the kind of star power that doesn't just sell tickets, it hijacks the whole night. Chicago's plan was to sell Reese as the face of the franchise. Instead, they handed the spotlight to a woman not even in uniform. Let's be real, the entire night was a disaster for the Sky. The theme, the venue, the matchup, everything backfired. They bet big on hype. Indiana brought substance. One team built a party around a player who couldn't suit up. The other team brought players who came to win. And they did. But the most disrespectful part? What happened next wasn't just a loss, it was a torch-passing moment. Because without Caitlin Clark, another Fever star stepped up and put on an all-time performance. If Chicago thought Caitlin Clark sitting out meant they could finally catch a break, they were dead wrong. Because on a night meant to crown Angel Reese, and in the absence of Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell said, "Cool, I got this." And she snapped. From the jump, you could feel it. Mitchell wasn't just playing to win, she was out there to make a statement. This wasn't a casual night at the office. It was a demolition mission. By the time the final buzzer sounded, Mitchell had dropped 35 points, a season high, and torched the Sky defense like she'd been personally offended by the Barbie decorations. 12 of 19 shooting from the field, 7 of 10 from 3. Let that marinate for a second. 70% from deep. In the United Center, on Chicago's biggest night, with no Caitlin Clark. She didn't just deliver, she detonated, and it wasn't just about points. Mitchell moved like she was 3 steps ahead on every possession. Her footwork was sharp, her shot selection was flawless, and her confidence radiated. Every time Chicago even thought about building momentum, Mitchell crushed it. She hit threes with hands in her face. She drove into traffic and finished at the rim. She pulled up in transition like she owned the court. And honestly, she did. Here's the part that's going to sting for Chicago fans. Mitchell made history. She became just the second player in Fever history, alongside Caitlin Clark herself, to put up 35-plus points, 5-plus assists, and 5-plus made threes in a single game. That's an exclusive club. And Mitchell punched her way in like it was nothing. On Barbie Night, in Angel Reese's arena, with Clark watching in street clothes. This was her moment, and she knew it. But don't get it twisted. This explosion didn't come out of nowhere. Mitchell has been quietly grinding, consistently producing for a Fever team that slowly figured out how to win games, with or without their superstar. She trained with a football coach in the offseason, focusing on defensive back drills to tighten her footwork, her lateral movement, her timing. And when this moment came, the biggest stage the Fever have played on in weeks, all that work showed up. Every cut looked precise. Every jumper had rhythm. She wasn't just playing basketball. She was performing surgery. And while Mitchell was lighting up the scoreboard like it was New Year's Eve, the Sky looked helpless. Defensive rotations late, perimeter contests weak, transition defense non-existent. And there was Kelsey, dancing through them all like they were standing still. She didn't just break their game plan, she broke their spirit. And just when it looked like Chicago couldn't sink any lower, another Fever weapon showed up, and this one came out of nowhere. While Kelsey Mitchell was putting on a clinic and torching the Sky like it was personal, something else started happening that made this game even more brutal. And honestly, more embarrassing for Chicago. The Fever's bench didn't just hold their own, they dominated. The supporting cast, the so-called role players, walked into the United Center like they'd been waiting for this exact moment. And they delivered. First up, Michaela Timson, a rookie who's been getting limited minutes all season, mostly flying under the radar. But on this night, she played like someone who'd been itching to prove that all she needs is a real shot. And when the lights were brightest, she shined. Timson dropped 14 points on 6 of 8 shooting. That's 75% from the field. For context, that's wild efficiency from any player, but for a rookie coming off the bench on a themed night with thousands watching and pressure everywhere, that's poise you can't teach. Every time she touched the ball, she moved with purpose, cut hard, got to her spots, finished through contact. She didn't just look good, she looked ready. And it wasn't just the buckets, it was the energy, the hustle, the way she disrupted passing lanes and got deflections that turned into fast breaks. There was one play where she poked the ball loose, sprinted the floor, finished strong on the other end, and forced Chicago to call a timeout. The crowd was stunned. Fever fans were roaring, and all the Sky could do was walk back to the bench while Timson flexed with that quiet confidence that said, "Yeah, I belong here." After the game, Kelsey Mitchell couldn't stop praising her. She literally called Timson the ultimate pro. And that's not something you hear lightly in this league, especially for a first-year player. But that's what makes Timson dangerous. She doesn't need 30 minutes to prove her worth. She just needs a window, and she'll bust the whole wall down. And then, as if Chicago hadn't been embarrassed enough, the Fever hit them with another surprise. A name nobody expected to come in and start making noise: Khloe Baby. If you're a casual fan, you probably didn't even know her name until this game. That's fair. She had just signed a 7-day contract on July 25th. But in just 10 minutes of game time, Baby scored 8 points and looked completely unbothered doing it. This wasn't some charity minute mop-up duty performance. No, Baby came in, stretched the floor, hit her shots, and played like she had absolutely nothing to lose. Her confidence was contagious. She knocked down threes like she was back in practice, drawing defenders out of the paint and giving Aaliyah Boston room to operate. Coach Stephanie White said afterward that Baby gave the team exactly what they needed: spacing, energy, and instant offense. And let's be real, it was the Sky who needed to be rescued, not the Fever. This is where the story gets brutal for Chicago. Think about it. Indiana walked into their arena, missing their best player, and still had 3 different players outside of Clark light them up. Mitchell dropped 35. Timson had a career night. And Baby, a brand new signee, came in like a sniper and started sinking daggers. Meanwhile, the Sky looked completely unprepared. Their defense was scrambling. Their rotations were slow. They couldn't keep up with the Fever's ball movement, and every time they overcommitted, Indiana made them pay. It was like watching a team that actually knows its system versus a team still trying to remember what play they called in the huddle. And here's the truth. This depth is what separates Indiana from so many other teams in the league right now. They're not just riding Caitlin Clark's stardom. They're building a real roster. Players like Timson and Baby are developing chemistry, confidence, and experience. And when it matters most, they're not scared of the moment. They step in, lock in, and produce. But the Sky, they weren't just losing on the scoreboard. They were losing the vibe, the energy, the momentum. And the worst part, it all happened on their night. And now the pink lights were starting to fade. At some point, you've got to stop calling it bad luck and start calling it what it really is: a collapse, a meltdown, a complete unraveling of a franchise in real time. That's exactly what the Chicago Sky delivered on Barbie Night. A full-blown implosion. And the most brutal part? It all happened under a spotlight they turned on themselves. Let's rewind. This wasn't just another home game. This was supposed to be the event. A statement night. The Sky booked the United Center, rolled out the pink carpet, and promoted this matchup like it was a championship preview. The theme was Barbie. The spotlight was Angel Reese. The fans were hyped. The merch was selling. The seats were packed. All the ingredients for a magical night in Chicago. But the second the ball was tipped, the dream died. Angel Reese wasn't playing. That alone was a gut punch. She was the face of the entire night. The energy, the marketing, the social media rollout, everything revolved around her. But instead of stepping into the spotlight, she was in street clothes, nursing an injury, and her absence left the entire event feeling hollow, empty, like a party without music. But even without Reese, you'd think the Sky would show some fight, right? It was their court, their fans, their moment. But instead, they laid down. What the Fever did to them wasn't just domination, it was public humiliation. Indiana didn't just walk into their house. They spray-painted their name on the wall, threw a party in their living room, and left with the champagne. The Fever controlled the pace, dictated the physicality, and sucked the oxygen out of the arena. Every time Chicago made a push, Indiana answered with a back-breaking shot. Mitchell hit a dagger three. Timson finished a tough layup. Baby drained another deep jumper. The Sky tried everything, different lineups, different coverages, but nothing worked. The building they booked as a celebration became a live viewing of their downfall. And the crowd noticed. You could feel the mood shift inside the United Center. Fans were stunned. You had sections that were completely silent. Some started leaving early. Others were just standing there, watching Indiana celebrate in their arena. The pink decor, the Barbie branding, the themed merch, it all turned into a punchline. The jokes started flying on Twitter. Fever Night, Kelsey Mitchell's house, Barbie got benched. Even Instagram lit up with memes comparing the Sky's performance to a toddler's tea party getting wrecked by a wrecking ball. And TikTok? Ruthless. Fans were making edits mid-game. One viral post joked that the Sky should have renamed the night Mitchell Monday, even though it was a Sunday. Another showed an empty merch stand with the caption, "All dressed up with nowhere to win." The internet dragged Chicago, and honestly, the team gave them all the material they needed. Here's what made it worse. Caitlin Clark, who wasn't even in uniform, was still the biggest star in the building. While Chicago was flailing on the court, Clark was out there signing over 200 autographs. Fans lined up in droves. Entire rows of people were more interested in a player not playing than the ones actually on the floor. That's how powerful her presence is and how invisible the Sky looked in their own city. And then there were the post-game interviews. Yikes. Coach Tyler Marsh sounded exhausted, defeated. He admitted teams have figured out how to exploit Chicago's weaknesses. He admitted they aren't executing the game plan. And he didn't sugarcoat it. He said the mistakes they're making are the same ones they've been making all season. That's not a strategy problem, that's a culture problem. That's the kind of quote that makes fans lose hope. Then came Rachel Bam's post-game comment, which felt like a nail in the coffin. She said the team had a screw-it mentality going into the game. Think about that. Your biggest home event of the season. Packed house, primetime spotlight. And players are walking in thinking, whatever happens, happens. That's not mindset. That's surrender. By the time it was over, it didn't even feel like a road win for Indiana. It felt like a home game. Fever fans were louder. Fever players were more composed. The Sky didn't just lose. They got outclassed, outworked, and out-hustled from top to bottom. And the worst part? They did it to themselves. They invited the Fever in. They promoted the matchup. They handed over the United Center. And Indiana responded by turning their celebration into a funeral. But while Chicago was busy collapsing, the Fever were making moves, building depth, stacking wins, and proving that this team isn't just about Clark. What happened next showed exactly why Indiana's future is terrifying. At this point, it's not just about one night. It's about what this night revealed. The Fever aren't just ahead of the Sky on the scoreboard. They're miles ahead in every direction that matters. Team chemistry, development, coaching, confidence, and vision. Indiana is sitting comfortably at 14-12, holding down third place in the East. Chicago, they've now fallen to 7-18, riding a 5-game losing streak, clinging to whatever's left of their playoff hopes. This isn't just a bad stretch, it's a franchise unraveling in real time. And here's what makes it brutal. Indiana's rise is happening without Caitlin Clark on the floor. They've learned how to win without their star, and they're doing it convincingly. Kelsey Mitchell has emerged as a legit closer. Boston is anchoring both ends like a seasoned vet. Timson and BBY are making noise. The depth is real. The system is clicking. So when Clark returns, healthy, rested, and hungry, this team doesn't just get better. They get scary. They've figured out how to be dangerous without her. Now imagine them with her. Meanwhile, Chicago keeps hoping things will magically turn around. They keep scheduling big games at premium arenas, throwing themed nights, trying to manufacture energy. But the results don't lie. They're not building a contender. They're chasing a narrative. And every time they go back to that Indiana matchup hoping for redemption, the Fever remind them just how far behind they really are. The scoreboard is a mirror, and what it's reflecting isn't pretty. That's the long-term damage. This isn't just a rivalry that's lopsided, it's one that's over before it ever truly began. Indiana is building something sustainable, something threatening. Chicago is clinging to storylines, hoping one viral moment can mask a losing season. But the Fever aren't interested in social media wins. They're coming for playoff banners. And the Sky? Well, they better hope the Barbie dream doesn't turn into a long-term rebuild nightmare. What we just witnessed in Chicago wasn't just a bad loss. It was a reality check, not just for the Sky, but for the entire league. Because for all the hype, all the media buildup, all the rivalry talk, the truth is clear now. One of these teams is building a future, and the other is selling nostalgia. The WNBA needs rivalries, yes, but they need to be real, competitive, earned. What's happening between Indiana and Chicago isn't a rivalry. It's a showcase. One team keeps rising, the other keeps booking theme nights and praying. And if you're paying attention, you'll realize this is bigger than Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese. This is about depth, development, and direction. The Fever are proving that their identity doesn't rely on one superstar. It's a system built to last. Their rookies are evolving. Their veterans are leading. Their bench is producing. And they've created a culture that wins, even when their biggest name is out of uniform. That's terrifying for the rest of the league. Because when Clark comes back, Indiana won't just be competitive, they might be unstoppable. Meanwhile, Chicago is at a crossroads. The marketing works, the fan interest is there. But what happens when the cameras shut off and the scoreboard tells the truth? If this franchise wants to compete, not just trend, it's going to take more than pink decorations and press conferences. It's going to take accountability. The rivalry hype sold tickets, but the Fever sold results. And when it's all said and done, history won't remember who sold more jerseys. It'll remember who actually won the games.